Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. All of the online for the entire season is done and dusted. Major 4 in Burbank is just around the corner, and what a bracket we have for the tournament. Some big first round games that we might not have expected, but these major qualifiers have been insane this time around, especially given the 12th seeds. The 12th seed means they will play theoretically the hard first round game, but actually as it works out, OpTic don't have the worst bracket in the world. It will be said though, the OpTic versus Miami storyline that's been continuing the entire season long may be coming to a head right when it matters. What have the script writers cooked up for this one? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Of course, that big series yesterday which said a lot about the way the rest of the season's going to go. Thieves versus Subliners. Of course, New York were kind of taking the mick out of Thieves the other day. Turns out they got reverse swept when it matters. Now, I know people were saying, oh, well, New York, they must have deliberately thrown in order for the seeding to work out in this way and therefore to disadvantage Carolina or Ravens or whatever. The reality is, New York have a far harder first round game now than they would have done otherwise had they just taken down Thieves as they should have done, you know, relatively easily. They're up 2-0. They could have closed out the series a number of different ways. They didn't. They got reverse swept, and fair play to Thieves pulling it off because it's been their ice that has been suspect. But let's be real, even New York Subliners at the start of this stage weren't looking so good online. They're a bit suspect. Here we are at the end of the stage, and they're losing again. This is the team, by the way, that won the Challengers Cup. They won the Elite the other day. Purge, Prelude, Awakening, and Cammy. Those are your 4 guys, and, you know, quick 4 in the finals here. So they've been smoking everyone as of late, and are clearly right now they're heavy favourites to effectively win the Challengers World Championship coming up in Dallas in a few weeks' time. Big storylines, of course, on those guys given their respective tenures in the league, and of course what it means for their potential comeback next season. Just to quickly note as well, OpTic, we're going to talk about them in a second, and the way the bracket, of course, has played out. They're now on a 6-series loss streak. We looked at this briefly yesterday. The worst is March 2014. They lost 10 in a row. But, well, Clayster actually points out in the replies that many of these games where they were getting DDoSed at the Red Bull headquarters for 75% of these because I accidentally leaked the IP address. So Clay's basically saying this 10 spree of losses back in Ghost was actually kind of like not really legit in some ways. So there is an argument to say that the worst ever spree that OpTic have been on is actually happening right now. Then again, it's 6 series in a row they've lost, but it is 6 online series in a row they've lost, which is a bit different to LAN. But let's be real, based on the recent evidence, is it going to be massively different when they go to LAN? I guess time will tell. Their first round game is going to be really, really interesting. So Dashy tweeted this out yesterday. We saw this tweet. Despite all those games, still confident in the boys to make the run. Appreciate the support. Now, this guy hits the replies, and obviously, given the state of OpTic and the disappointing results over the last couple of weeks, there's going to be guys in your replies. And here he comes. LAN doesn't fix chokes and horrible teamwork. Y'all look lost and confused. 0-10 and S&D is tragic. Now, you know, I'm not necessarily sure he's wrong, right? But anyway, Dashy decides to come back, and I don't really have a problem with this. I think it's just pretty funny, really, and I think it does depend on who the player is and in what circumstances, whether they get clowned on or not for stuff like this. But, you know, because if it was Scrappy, they've just secured a top seed, they've just gone 6-1, whatever it was, Toronto this stage, and Scrappy was clapping back at, you know, someone talking trash in his replies, then I think he'd be like, oh, you know, here he goes, pretty entertaining. But in Dashy's case, it's a bit different, right? Just because they've been on a hard run, you might expect Dashy just to kind of stay off social media, be like, okay, whatever, the fans can say what they want, we're going to do our talking on LAN. But no, he's clapping back at this guy, says you'll have to get to 500 followers one day, I believe, and then he says, you've got to win another event, little bro. I mean, this guy really is going hard, and it's pretty funny, because often you'll see someone will talk about a trash in the replies to a pro, they'll get, you know, responded to it, obviously, ratios, and then they'll be like, oh, you know, I'm a big fan, Dashy, I met you at this event back in the day, like, you know, love your work, you know, best shot in the game and all this, right? They always suck up, you guys know how it goes. But no, this guy doubles down. You'll win another event one day, little bro. Highly unlikely though, but keep blaming it on online though. And then Dashy replies, 32-year-old grown man with a child. Is that the example you're trying to set to your kids by begging other strangers on the internet to pay your cash app? So, I mean, he kind of cooked him there. I haven't gone to the guy's profile. I assume he kind of cooked him there. But, you know, whatever you think about it, it's people are saying Dashy's crashing out, right? Because people are looking at the fact that he's replied to these guys on social media after going 1-6 online, and people are like, look, these OpTic guys have completely lost the plot. What is going on right now? So whether there's anything in that, you know, intrigue to your perspective in the comments below. These, though, with the final standings, as Clay says, this is going to ruin the tour. Toronto, FaZe, Surge, Thieves, etc., etc. In the end, it required 3 victories to get to the winners bracket, but it actually even required more than that for some, because Ravens had 3 and they didn't quite make it. Brutal for Ravens, losing out on a winners bracket spot in the way they did. Now, sure, had they have made winners, you know, let's say if Thieves lost to the Subliners or whatever it would have been, then Ravens would have made winners based on, you know, because there'd have been loads of teams at 3 and 4, and therefore it probably would have been Gorillas that missed out. But instead, because there was only 2 teams at 3 and 4, and Gorillas had the head-to-head over Ravens because they beat them this stage in what may go down to the rest of the season as one of the worst and most, you know, crucial series Ravens would lose all year. But as a result of that, even with 3 wins, they missed out. Now, had they been the 8th seed, they would have probably played Toronto, and, you know, more than likely that's a foregone conclusion loss, although you never really know. So maybe, you know, you're starting in losers 1 anyway would be the argument here that other teams are going to be thinking. And for Ravens, you know, it's maybe not the end of the world who they're going to play. We'll see how that plays out over the coming minutes. But it's always nice to start in winners, even if you are going to lose the first round, because at least you've got a chance. And, you know, if you win a winners round 1 game, you're guaranteed top 6, which is 30 points on the board straight away, so that's not bad. And it gets you ready for the rest of the tournament, of course, but this is how it all played out, and then the bracket plays into, as we're going to see in just a couple of seconds. Obviously, Clay's happy that online COD is done, but it's still not ideal the way that it worked out. Still, everything is determined at the major. There is actually still a chance, which is, I mean, a ridiculous chance, but it's got to be mentioned at the very least, that they could still, the Boston, by the way, could still make it to the World Championship. We'll actually see what that looks like in a few minutes' time here. Of course, for Ravens, they're the first team to go 3 and 4 in qualifiers and actually start in losers. But the reality is that they played those 3 games in a row, one of which against the Los Angeles Gorillas, that had they simply just won that series in Game 5 and not lost to Game 5 when they shouldn't have done, then they would have been fine. But in the grand scheme of things, they've still got a chance. This is the way the bracket is going to be playing out then, so I'll just make this a little bit bigger. This is what we have. Let's start on the winner's side. Toronto Gorillas is the first game, right? So this is not really what you might have expected in terms of winners round 1 games. This is because this stage has been pretty wild in terms of some teams really going hard to try and make it to the World Championship, other teams such as OpTic certainly falling off this stage, and even that is true of the Subliners as well, because, well, as we saw a couple of seconds ago, the way that this played out, New York ended up as the 7th seed. Yes, they were 4 in 3, but because of their map count percentage and all this other stuff, they actually ended up in 7th place, with Thieves all the way up in 4th, and even Seattle in 3rd, despite being only 4 in 3 themselves. So it was an absolute mess this stage, and of course 7th seed plays 2nd seed, which is why we have the following. So Ultra as the number 1 seed, they played Gorillas round 1, definitely a favourable game for them. Ultra probably go in here as the favourites to win the tournament, right? Number 1 seed, just took down FaZe online, so they're probably favoured here to get the job done, although, to be honest, FaZe, they never really go into a tournament not as favourites. We just know that on Championship Sunday, things can be slightly different. So Toronto Gorillas, then Thieves versus Heretics, right? So the way the bracket always works out, the number 1 seed gets the most advantage. They play the 8th seed round 1, and then they play the 4th or the 5th seed round 2, which is the best possible game. That means, though, that Thieves or Heretics, the strongest possible seeds, the 4th and the 5th seed, they play the weakest seed. Whoever loses that and drops down to losers. And, well, we know who the lowest seed is of this particular major. FaZe New York, though, is a mega round 1 game, because so far this season, we have basically always seen, even if, you know, New York or someone would end up being the 5th seed, they would still play the 4th seed, which would be, you know, like a Surge or something in the first round. They wouldn't play another top 4 team. Whereas this time we have Toronto, obviously top 4 team, we have FaZe and New York playing each other. So, I mean, that's mega, right? Now, the winner of this obviously is in a good spot. FaZe are going to be favoured to win, but it's a big opportunity really for the Subliners. And also it means whoever plays the loser of this is kind of screwed in terms of their World Championship ambitions, you would well think. And that team is the Minnesota Rocker. So it ain't looking that good for them as it stands, I'm not going to lie. And then Surge versus Legion. So there's so many interesting things going on here. Effectively, Thieves or Heretics, whoever wins that, are guaranteed the World Championship, right? Because they're guaranteed 30 points for getting top 6. So, but more than likely, both of those teams are making it anyway. Surge and Legion is an interesting one, because if we look at the standings, as we will here in a second, Legion, or let's say Ravens, Ravens need Legion to lose. Realistically speaking, Ravens' only chance of making it is to take Legion's spot. They're probably not getting anyone else's spot, as we'll see in the coming minutes, to make it to champs, so they absolutely need Surge to win that series. Then though, Ravens play the loser of Toronto Gorillas, so they can get their revenge against Gorillas for what happened online, and they can start to make the run. The thing is, the Ravens, in the second rounds, they play either Thieves, Miami, or OpTic. And OpTic start here. Boston play the loser of Surge Vegas. Rocker are in a tough spot because they play the loser of FaZe versus New York. So looking at the bracket, I'm thinking, yeah, Rocker are kind of chalked. Boston obviously are chalked. But what about this OpTic storyline, right? Because the entire season, one of the big talking points behind the scenes has been Pred versus Miami Heretics, or just Miami in general against the OpTic boys. All sorts of drama, all sorts of trash talk going on. And the entire season, Pred has had their number. He's basically been talking about, you know, never going to lose to those guys, etc., etc. And that's what they've done all season long since Vikul threw up the 3-0 at the start of the season. OpTic have smoked them every single time, on LAN or online. This is an opportunity. Now, to be fair, Miami could very easily beat Thieves. And if they were to, then it's Thieves versus OpTic. But either game is far from easy, right? Like, that is not an easy first round game in losers, I would say, against either Thieves or against Miami. And it just feels to me like the storyline might be written, right? Thieves get the dub here round 1, and then we get OpTic versus Miami in the losers brackets, and all the storylines on the season come to a head at that particular moment. So yeah, this is how it looks in the losers bracket. Obviously, Ravens don't have, it's not the worst for them because they could play Gorillas, and next round they play what will be a winnable series. But OpTic are going to need to beat Thieves or Miami, then they're going to need to beat probably Ravens, which, you know, 2 obviously winnable games, but not exactly easy, and then they can go on to continue to make the run from there. This is how it looks for champs, right? So Heretics are at 170, Surge are at 170. 170 is considered to be the number that will get you in. So probably they've already qualified. Thieves at 165 now. That's very close to making it. They may well make it. Legion at 150. So, you know, if you're Ravens, if you're Gorillas, if you're Boston, or if you're, okay, not Boston, if you're Minnesota Rocker, for example, you're looking at this, you're thinking, okay, realistically, Vegas is the spot that we can get. Maybe Thieves, if Thieves crash out dead last, obviously there's a chance, because 15 points you get for top 8, and a top 6 can overhaul that. So, and a top 6 will get Ravens to 180, which will be good enough for sure. So that's really what they're targeting. It's still all to play for, but there's just so much that ride on the way that this bracket has actually played out. I did promise I'd share this for you guys though, so there is a possibility, as remarkable as it is, for the Boston Breach to qualify for the World Championship. All that has to happen is the following. They just need to beat Legion round 1, assuming like that's what happens in the losers bracket if Seattle, okay, so like Seattle cannot afford to lose to Legion for Boston's sake, because then Boston will not be able to make it anyway. So they need to ensure that Legion lose, and then of course Boston could just beat them and then stick Vegas on 150, which is a number that Breach can overhaul. Gorillas need to lose to Ultra, which is definitely possible. Gorillas beat Ravens, which is definitely possible as well. Gorillas then lose to OpTic, Thieves, or Heretics. Rocket lose to FaZe or Subliners. So all of these seem realistic enough, but then they have to win the major. So this is the problem, right? So effectively, they have to win it and get 100 points, so they'd get to 160, and then they need to hope that those other games go in their favor to ensure that Legion and Ravens stay on 150, and then they can actually overhaul. So it's still possible for Boston, but you know, it isn't going to happen. So we're about to Twitter your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
We're missing 2 actually. I like that.
Bro, tell me to do. Bro, dude, am I tripping, bro? Hold up, dude. Like this specific smile, dude. Bro. What the fuck? Bro. Knew I've seen that smile before, dude. What the fuck? Holy fuck.
We're missing 2 actually. I like that.